Hello and welcome back to Why Geopolitics Matters, the podcast. For this week's episode, we will be discussing the Mecca Pact, the SpaceX impact on the moon, and the changing relations between the United States and the Korean Peninsula. But we're going to start with our fun topic first. It's about German transport. Germany's new transport minister experienced problems plaguing the country's rail network. The state-owned operator Deutsche Bahn and the rail network has faced increasing complaints over the years that were due to declining punctuality, mechanical breakdowns, and poor service in general. At the start of the transport minister's journey, he had to change carriages in a train taking him from Berlin to Hamburg after the air conditioning stopped working. And of course, this was during a time when we were in the middle of a heat wave, so it was very uncomfortable. And the chronic underinvestment in Germany has derailed yet another myth about the Teutonic efficiency of Germany. It's Deutsche Bahn's long-distance high-speed rail is among the least punctual in Europe. So it's very interesting to be able to talk about this sort of thing because Germans are known to being very punctual, and yet their rail is one of the most inefficient things that they have going for them right now. I know I experienced that a couple months ago when I went to go visit my brother, and it was just one delay after another, and I had to stay overnight in Munich because the train missed it and didn't have another one to go into the Czech Republic. So it was definitely interesting. And in October, the national rail operator broke its own poor record with roughly only half of all long-distance trains arriving without delay. Any thoughts or experiences from you guys?
Well, so far I haven't been that much onto the Deutsche Bahn, so I will say that I'm quite lucky to haven't dealt with that much. But I know that they are renowned in Europe for that. And but like comparing it to what France is having, because we faced the same heat waves, and we had also like several train cars that weren't able to move anymore because like it was too hot for them to drive, right. um, and it was exactly the same issues, but somehow we still managed to have trains on time. Germany, like if there's no delay, you haven't experienced the proper German Deutschbahn.
I don't know if we can call this as a divine justice. So let's gonna understand the issue. Sent to inspect the trains, got personally inspected by the trains, and Germany's rail system really say, "Let me give you a live demo." You know, it's something that German population, foreign population like us going to visit Germany are always facing in these kind of situations. So nothing says fact-finding mission like finding the facts but sweating through them.
Yeah.
So they just show him instead of wait for a report of the issues, you know?
Yeah.
So I just can to say divine justice.
Well, and public transport is such an interesting thing because I know in our part of the world, trains aren't really that big on the Western Hemisphere, not like it is here in Europe. So I know a couple of months ago, President Steinbaum was really trying to ramp up infrastructure for trains. So it was something that the government there was actually really, really interested in getting going and doing a big promotion for it. The United States has never been popular. The only person that ever loved his trains was President Joe Biden because he used to take the Amtrak back to Delaware from Washington D.C. He was like known for Amtrak Joe. That was his nickname. So it's it's hard to say, oh, it's all crap and oh, the train system, it's the worst. It's like at least you have trains. Not
Yeah,
something
yeah.
that you really get everywhere. So there's lots of countries that are still very jealous that you guys even have a proper transport system, even if it isn't fully up and functional.
Absolutely. And what about Jesus? What about with the vision board about the 70% punctuality by 2029.
Yeah.
So, wow, that's really
Ambitious.
yeah,
Yeah.
ambitious, of course. So the plan is delayed 3 out of 10 times,
Yeah.
but like on purpose and with a bonus structure attached.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's nice. That's nice for German efficiency.
Yeah.
Hmm.
True. So let's move over to our first topic of today. Take it away, Antoine.
Yes, so as you may have been aware of, on 7th of August 2026, Turkey and Saudi Arabia and Pakistan have signed a new defense pact, which on this face may look like the creation of a new military bloc in the Middle East and in the wider Muslim world. So the pact reportedly commits to the three states to regard an armed attack against one of them as an attack against all three. So it is presented as a defensive agreement, not as an alliance directed against any specific countries. But of course, in geopolitics, agreements have to be judged not only by their authors, but how their authors describe them. They also have to be judged by the capabilities they bring together, the fears they generate, and the strategic choices they make possible. So for the three countries, well, they are significantly different countries, yet they also bring very different, distinct assets to this emerging partnership. Turkey is a major military power within NATO membership. It controls a critical geography between Europe, the Middle East, and the Black Sea, as well as a rapid expanding defense industry. Turkey's drones, armored vehicles, and other military technologies have become increasingly visible in international conflict and defense market of the past decade. And in this regard, you can also check my article on Turkey's defense industry and Europe. For Pakistan, well, it contributes to one of the largest armed forces in the Muslim world. It has decades of military experiences and a central position in South Asian security. And it is also the only nuclear armed Muslim majority state. When it comes to Saudi Arabia, it brings something different, which is enormous financial resources, energy influence, control over strategically important territory, and considerable political weight in the Arab and Muslim worlds. So the timing on this agreement is also crucial. It comes during a period of intense regional insecurity. There's a war in Gaza, tensions involving Israel and Iran, the instability in Syria, Iraq, and Yemen, and of course, the vulnerability of Gulf infrastructures, which have all contributed to broader sense that existing security arrangements may no longer be sufficient. The reported Israeli and US attacks on Iran have also further intensified these concerns. For Saudi Arabia, the issues are not necessarily a desire to abandon the US, because Riyadh continues to value its American security relationship, particularly in areas such as intelligence, advanced weapons, and defense and air defense. But Saudi foreign policy has become more diversified. The kingdom has expanded its relations with China, improved ties with Iran, and sought closer cooperation with regional powers, including Turkey and Pakistan. It is also trying to avoid depending entirely on one external protector. Instead, it is building several overlapping relationships so that it has more options during a crisis. And for Turkey and Pakistan, closer cooperation with Saudi Arabia also has a clear advantage. It can create opportunities for defense exports, investments, military exercises, and also greater diplomatic influence in the region. So it not only reflects security concerns, but also economic and industrial interests. Another reason this pact is important is the history between Turkey and Saudi Arabia. During the years following the Arab Spring, Ankara and Riyadh often supported opposing political forces, and the two countries also found themselves on opposite sides on several regional disputes, including the conflict in Libya. And relations deteriorated further after the murder of Saudi journalists in the Saudi consulate in Istanbul in 2018. But the relations gradually improved, and there's also economic pressures, regional instability, and the need for diplomatic flexibility, which encourage both sides to move towards rapprochement. So Even though ideological disagreements have not disappeared and competition for influence has not disappeared either, both countries are still increasingly getting closer. It would also be tempting to call the agreement a new Muslim NATO in a way, but that description would probably be premature, as merely relying to the commitment of the three states to regard an armed attack against one of them as an attack against all three. Nonetheless, the three countries do not have identical strategic priorities. Turkey is focused on a broad range of issues from Syria to Iraq and Libya, the Eastern Mediterranean, the Black Sea. They're also quite involved in Western Africa and start getting more and more involved in international politics. Saudi Arabia is primarily concerned with the Gulf, of course, Iran, and the missile and drone threats, as well as, of course, it's the protection of its energy infrastructures and the security of its economic transformation. But these priorities overlap, but they are not the same. And the credibility of the agreement will therefore depend on its practical mechanisms. So will the three countries establish permanent consultation procedures? Will they organize regular military exercises? Will they share intelligence? Will they develop joint defense production programs? Most importantly, what exactly would happen if one of them were attacked? Well, a close collective defense does not automatically mean that the other two states would enter a war. Military assistance could take many forms: diplomatic support, intelligence cooperation, weapon deliveries, logistical aid, or, of course, direct intervention. So the pact's real value will be measured by what it produces beyond the signing ceremony. It has to be more concrete afterwards. So even if the agreement is officially defensive, other states will interpret it through the lens of regional rivalry. Iran may be concerned that a closer relationship between Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Pakistan could eventually become a platform for military intelligence cooperation, may be directed against it. Israel will also watch the agreement carefully, partly because of Turkey's increasing critical position towards Israeli policy and Pakistan's political and military ties with the Arab world. But it would be a mistake to assume that, of course, the pact is automatically an anti-Iran or anti-Israel alliance. So the more accurate interpretation is that the agreement increases strategic uncertainty. It adds another layer to an already complex regional system involving the US, China, Russia, Iran, Israel, and the Gulf monarchies. And this is precisely why it matters so much.
I think that's one of the highlights of this situation is about how is the reaction for the people involved, if we can consider it in this way. Like, for example, of course, Iran, well, the Islamic Republic of Iran, uh, they are sure for publicly, or at least won't bring them security per one Iranian, according with the things that they already said. So Israel stays silent, I think. And I also read something about analysts in Washington will likely view it like favorably. I mean, they are not considered like a rival bloc. It's more like it looks like, at least according with all this panorama, like a light burden sharing, if we can be called in that way. uh, I just want to instantly, when you read the title of the news about this situation, you just can think like, okay, Turkey brings the army, of course. Saudi Arabia brings the money, and Pakistan brings the bomb. So it's really interesting. It's a really good combination if we're talking about work and security strategies. So the three of them are a really good combination, at least for them. But let's see what's gonna happen with the rest of the um, interested parties in the situation.
Yeah, it's interesting that these middle powers want to start forming some kind of group that would get more of the intelligence sharing and military know-how together. So getting that military information, sharing what kind of equipment that you have. But also, I think Pakistan is a really interesting one, especially since their role in a lot of the talks with Iran and the United States. And so they're bringing a little bit of that too, not just their bomb, but also bringing their diplomatic skills. So I think that's a really interesting aspect of this deal. And recently, Ankara's success with the recent NATO summit. They did very well in the situation that they were in. But it's Saudi definitely needs to have more friends. They've been kind of isolated from a lot of other Gulf countries due to uh, being such a higher regional power compared to everybody else. They've also been fighting with Qatar and all these other countries, and especially if things are going to kick off in Yemen even further with the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb. So I think Saudi Arabia is looking for more regional friends, and this pact can really elevate that in all these different aspects that you were talking about. So it is interesting that they didn't make it out to be like a NATO pact where it's essentially Article 5 will be inflicted if anything happens to them. I think they're kind of slow rolling it. And it would also be really interesting to see if there's any other countries that might be able to join this pact later, if they're going to expand it out to other people in the region. There's not a lot of friendly, but maybe middle friendly going on there. So maybe they can bring other countries that they've been talking to and trying to rebuild relations, especially along the Red Sea for Saudi Arabia that wants to get their oil and out of the countries through pipelines. So it's definitely something interesting to keep looking at and seeing if this is going to be just the start of like a further alliance building situation in the region.
Yes, I fear as well that because like when you look at Pakistan regionally, it's not, let's say, the most liked country because it has there's like, I could say, like a small war going on with Afghanistan.
In
There's
India
ten,
and
the,
inside the country as well with the
yeah,
Balochistan. So like they're not in a stable situation to
no,
begin
no,
with.
no,
Yeah. And but they're
definitely,
not
and they
even
have,
in a choke point. Like there's not like a reason that they're important, but they do have like very significant impact on the region.
yeah, yeah, and it's like when you look at them, it's like major countries in, actually it's like they're quite far away, and it's like they all have their regional importance at a specific region with, and they, as I mentioned, like they bring all their distinct needs onto the table. So like bringing them together makes actually a lot of sense because I guess they are the closest among the regional powers.
Yeah, but they're right on the other side of Iran. So it kind of, and Turkey is right above Iran, and then Saudi Arabia is right next to it as well. So it does make sense that it's all just right around Iran. And well, not really Israel, but like proximity is like right there. But you can see that like these three countries are like really, really close to Iran and trying to keep that power in check. So it really is like a geopolitical issue because they're literally surrounding Iran. And it's a pact that isn't like aimed pointedly at Iran, but it is like we see what the future is going to hold. So we're trying to like get our ducks in a line.
Yeah, I think that it's just to try to understand, or like in a simple words, Pakistan just extend nuclear arms solidarity to Saudi Arabia and Turkey, like in really general words. It's like it's still a defense pact, and not exactly we are talking about a non-proliferation situation. So also, if we start to think that these kind of actions are related, that they are not fully trust the US anymore,
Hmm.
it's just maybe like a backup plan of security.
Everybody's
So,
getting a backup plan right now.
well, it's like the backup plan of the backup plan.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that it's that. It's like just three countries that don't fully trust the US anymore. So they try to take the issue
Yeah, the trust is
in
wavering.
their
They're down
hands.
to about the 70% mark. Like they still want their money. They still want the weapons that are coming out of the US. So they're still friendly. They've still got their relations. They still want something out of the United States. They want the nuclear program in Saudi Arabia. They want help whenever they need it for Pakistan, and because they of all the things that are going on in Afghanistan. And then there's also Turkey, who's a NATO ally. So it's just all these different things at once that they're not unfriendly, which is like you said, the US aren't mad at this pact, but the US is also probably like, cool, they can do it their own because we want to be more hands off everywhere, anyways, because that's the Trump administration credo.
And I think as well, like one thing that is important is that these deal overlap with NATO in a way. Because
Mm,
like I mean, the fact that we have Ankara in the deal makes it a way more closer to NATO than any more independent alliance in a way. Like we still have to keep that in mind that I don't think it's in Turkey's interest to leave NATO and make their own independent deal.
yeah. So, Manuel, tell us what's happening on the moon.
Yeah, from Saudi Arabia, let's go to the moon. So, um, on August 5th, yeah, I think that it was August 5th, a piece of a SpaceX rocket that launched from Earth back in January 2025. So we are talking as the people say classify as space trash. Slammed into the moon at over 5,000 miles per hour. So that's really crazy speed with the force of nearly 3 tons of TNT. And the wildest part, this wasn't an accident nobody saw coming. NASA knew it was going to happen, and scientists were actually excited about it. I think that they want to see, I don't know, something like
I'm
that's,
sorry, you said that they were excited about it?
yeah, they're really excited about it. They want to see the consequences of this. I don't know. So, what exactly happened? The object was the upper stage of a Falcon 9 rocket. So, it's about 45 feet long. Uh, and back in January 2025, so more than 1.5 years ago, it had launched two lunar landers, Firefly's Blue Ghost 1, which landed successfully at Japan's iSpace Hakuto R, which crashed. Once its job was done, the empty booster stage separate and drift through the space. Over the following year and a half, solar activity and the moon's gravity gradually pull it onto a collision course. By the time NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory ran the numbers, they calculated a 100% chance of impact. So it was not a surprise. Uh, this was predicted. And then the impact itself. When it hit, the booster carved out a crater roughly 100 feet wide and 16 feet deep, near two existing lunar craters called Einstein and Bell. So, one brother more for these craters. To put the speed in perspective, it was traveling at about 5,400 miles per hour when it struck the surface. And this wasn't the first time something like this has happened. It's only the seventh known artificial object to hit the moon since 1959. But NASA also points out that natural meteoroids with similar energy hit the moon about every 6 days. So, not unusual situation. In cosmic terms, this is actually a pretty normal occurrence. And then, what scientists care about this situation. Here's the part that makes more than just space junk failing. Carl Schmidt, a planetary scientist at Boston University, has been studying the impact because events like these are rare opportunities. He actually detected sodium and lithium gas release from the impact, which helped confirm the collision happened and is giving researchers new data on the moon's very thin atmosphere. Something called the lunar exosphere, NASA's Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter, is also going to fly over the impact site within the next couple of weeks to take before and after photos. So that imagery will help scientists study lunar geology and, importantly, improve how we track objects in space, which matters more every year as we launch more missions. So while all these scientific and space crazy things are important to us, this event sits in an interesting intersection. The same private companies pushing forward the new space race, aka SpaceX, Firefly, eSpace from Japan, are also leaving debris behind. And that debris is now becoming a scientific resource almost by accident.
Hmm.
So that's we want to call it collateral effects. As more countries and companies send hardware toward the moon, incidents like these are only going to become more common, which raises a real question the space industry is starting to grapple with. As lunar traffic increases, who's responsible for tracking and managing what we leave behind up there?
Yes.
That it's maybe for some of all us are like a new question, but this is a question that it reminds like I don't know, maybe since some decades ago. We have to understand that the space junk, artificial of course, it's increasing rapidly in the last decades with the increasing number of satellites, increasing number of space rockets, and all these new and old companies and private and public doing research in the space. Well, this is one of the consequences. So since the international law perspective, we have to regulate what is happening with all these things, because now this kind of incidents are like not with a bad collateral effect for human beings or for earth. I mean, it's like, okay, you crash the moon, nothing is happened about security of countries or people. But what gonna happen if one of these situations gonna affect later the security of people? That's the thing here. So who was in charge? Because as we can remind from the International Treaty of Space, no one talking about governments, countries, nations, and no one can claim like a position from moon or from any other satellite, natural satellites, or any space bodies. So what's next? This event sits in an interesting intersection. The same private companies pushing forward the new space race, again, like SpaceX, Firefly, and Space, are also doing this kind of thing. So maybe the answer could be easy. The people that it's doing the mess has to clean the mess. But it's not exactly like that.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay, it's okay. So um what in conclusion, what we can do or what we can expect about this situation? um a rocket stage did its job, drift for a year and a half, and turned into an unplanned science experiment. So it was like, okay, we are taking we are yeah, taking opportunities about the resources. But it's not just about that. It's a small story about a big shift. Humanity is now leaving footprints, craters, also on the moon regularly, enough that it's becoming a routine. So, reading this at a natural peace lands right around like the next years, the next couple of years or the next decade, it's making us wondering a lot of things about how we can regulate these kind of scenarios. Again, was kind of luckily situation because not was like a real damage for anybody. But what happened when this kind of space junk is also affecting um, their research, their resources, and the belongings of other private or public companies. So that's the thing here in the moon and in the.
Yeah, it's interesting because like that's something that people have been always really kind of worried about with the space program and putting stuff up into orbit. So stuff does fall to Earth like all the time, but because most of the Earth is covered by water, it's landing in the oceans. It's not landing on somebody's backyard or but there are incidents of that happening. I think it happened once in Florida because Cape Canaveral is right there where they launch most of um, the spaceships. So it's something that people need to take a lot more responsibility for. And when the government was the ones going up, then of course it was easier. The government would, take care of that issue. But now that these private companies are the ones that are going up, and if something falls back down, that is going to be a really big problem. And also, they've been talking about space junk for years. There's so many decommissioned satellites just wandering around. They're not doing anything. They're not sending any information back. It's absolute trash. And it's so, I also saw some images of what it looks like with everything orbiting the Earth. And it just doesn't look like, it looks horrible. And what kind of impact is that having in the space around the Earth? And how is that impacting everything else? So it's definitely something that there needs to be a lot more regulation on it. Like you said, I think policy is going to be really important here. And if the governments don't have some kind of international organization to be able to police this issue, they can't get it together. There's so many technological advances that we've been having, the internet, AI, space, like all these things need like a global response and policy, and countries need to start working together instead of like competing against each other. And for astropolitics, that's like the biggest thing that people talk about, is that nobody is talking to each other. They just want to do better than the other one and get their space hegemony out there first. So I think you brought a really interesting, I know it's a science experiment to see how it goes, but it's also like, okay, are we going to keep testing out the ocean and seeing how like space trash is impacting the ocean? I don't think that's a good idea. I think that's just going to make the ocean a
Me
little bit
neither,
more
but
problematic.
it's maybe a good idea for some people.
Yeah. So it's tricky. We need like some kind of global policy response to stuff like this to get it like, so it's not just one scientist who's like, let's see what happens when we blow shit up. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
like I want to see that too, but it's like, priorities.
Yeah. And I've seen like the exact same map I think you're talking about. And I believe that same for like part of astropolitics. There's like it's not only like a one person problem. So like when you see all the trash up there, that could actually impact not only like uh not only it could go back on Earth, most of them would be destroyed because of the heat produced. But there's still like big chunks of trash up there that would be significantly more powerful than just like the regular small nail. Um, and
Yeah,
the
like you were saying of how fast it was impacting the moon. Like if stuff is flying around that quickly and then it hits like the International Space Station where people are living, that's going to be a problem.
yeah,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
you can also imagine just not even eating the International Space Station, just heating a regular satellite. Can you imagine the
Yeah.
chain reaction that it would cause because then, like, let's say the satellite just like
Takes out
also
Starlink,
produce.
and then Ukraine doesn't have any of their internet anymore.
Well, it would produce so many small so many small chunks of trash afterwards, because another trash like, just crashed into satellite, and then these particles would like go fly into other satellites. Like it could, I think,
Chain reaction.
yeah, could lead to like massive chain reaction, and it's like a global problem, like because these things don't regard if it's like a Chinese or a Pakistani or a French or whatever nationality satellite it is. They would just crash in it. So it would actually be a problem for anyone having something in space.
That it's practically the whole population of, right now, because um, maybe someone can say like, I'm not the owner of a SpaceX. I'm not Elon Musk, so not my problem. But it is like, we know that everything is working with satellites today. Everything, everything in the world is working. GPS, internet connection, databases of governments, everything that we are using in our daily lives are working thankfully to the satellites that it orbiting currently our Earth. So yeah, that's really interesting topic that we should try to analyze from all the perspectives, like the policy perspective, political perspective, and also from ecological terms about talking about the resources that we are sending to space that they are not returning to our planet. At the same time, the risk of this crashes not just into the lunar surface, but even into oceans and land here in our planet. So, yeah, we need to analyze all these perspectives also from the international law, that it's important to think about what we should do about if we need to extend the current regulations, if we need to create new ones regulations. So all these things, I try to cover it in a new article that you can read in our next newsletter. So stay tuned about that if you are interested about the space law.
Perfect. So, moral of the story, clean up after yourself, dudes. So now we're going to go over to the Korean Peninsula. It has been an absolutely wild week because last weekend on Truth Social, Trump announced that he wanted the Pentagon to reduce joint military exercises in South Korea. He has also claimed that these exercises are a costly expenditure for the United States, as well as hostile to North Korea, who is unthreatening and respectful to him. So I guess he forgot back in 2017 when the North Korean leader called him mentally deranged dotard after Mr. Trump delivered a speech at the UN threatening to totally destroy North Korea if the United States had to defend itself or its allies. But, I digress. The relationship has changed with North Korea since Trump has received love notes. And when he visited the demilitarized zone in 2019, he also announced on Wednesday that he will be meeting Kim Jong un later this year, potentially during a trip to Asia in November for the Asia Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit in Shenzhen, China. The very next day, North Korea launched 10 short range ballistic missiles towards the sea. And the barrage came less than a day after Trump claimed that he was planning to meet Kim Jong un, but Kim's sister said that she knows absolutely nothing about any talks between the United States and North Korea about this upcoming meeting. So, as usual, we don't really know what Trump is talking about. That's par for the course at this point. But the talks are probably a good thing, probably a bad thing. We don't really know if it's actually going to happen. It might be bluster like he's been doing on a lot of things recently, but it definitely woke up the South Koreans and they're very, very nervous. And they're reaching out to Japan and trying to coordinate new military goals. So the other thing that was really interesting that is only sort of connected to what's happening in South and North Korea. Um, there was this aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln, who was stuck at sea. I don't know if you guys actually read anything about what was going on there. They've been deployed for like 200 days, and it's just people mental health deteriorating. Some of the guys haven't even seen the light of day since they got on board. It's just been a really horrible situation. So, in order to get the USS Abraham Lincoln out of the Middle East, the USS George Washington carrier had to move in. And this one is usually positioned in the Pacific. So that so nobody came in behind the George Washington carrier to relieve them because there's only 11 carriers that are going at the same time. They need a lot of upkeep. They can only be out for so long. But without that carrier in the Pacific, a lot of US allies are very nervous about not having that backup. And like if China were to move on Taiwan, if North Korea does something, so basically the South China Sea is completely unattended by US help. So it's just a really weird situation. The timing of all of it feels really weird too, very uncomfortable. It's got to be that a lot of the citizens of Asia are very nervous at this point because so many things could happen, and there's not a lot of support that the US has been saying that they want to support more in the Pacific. They want to move out of these other wars in the Middle East, but things are changing so rapidly with all the decisions that the Trump administration is making that it seems like it's relationships with the United States is becoming really untenable. Thoughts?
Yeah, and like the comparison, I mean the comparison, the fact that the USS, the one that is positioned the like the one that has some trouble with its
Oh yeah, the
personnel.
USS Lincoln. Yeah, the one that's
The
left. Yeah, they're home now. I think they're back in San Diego now.
really
At least I think they're close. If
or
not
en
already there.
route,
Yeah.
like routing towards there.
I think
Yeah,
they're
because
like
like
almost there. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, because I've seen that's like probably the biggest problems for the US now is that the amount of let's say money they engaged in Iran is so important that they have to back off from so many other things elsewhere. So that's precisely what's happening in South Korea, and I don't think it's like a good. Um, it's definitely like a message of weakness sent to the rest of the world, because Iran were still able to run their own country, even though they got the supposedly the biggest military power in the world facing them. So that's also like a very surprising message to send to the US allies, and especially to South Korea, because the US are still like super concerned about China, the Chinese power in the region.
They are and they aren't. It's just weird. It's just all this back and forth. Like we want to be able to do trade deals with China, but we need to back off. We need to do all these, like, it doesn't make any sense. There's not a whole lot of clarity on what, like, the goals are. And then it doesn't make any military sense either, because I think he said something like 49,000 troops are needed for these exercises in South Korea, but it's really half the number. And it, what you get out of like helping and doing these training exercises is building closer relationships. But then you're going to turn around and billions of dollars is just showered in bombs on Iran. And it's like, let's think about which is more expensive.
Yeah. I think that we should, of course, the thing here is that the situation it could be analytical for the different angles. I think at first, I think that the visit itself is a message, not exactly a milestone. I mean, Putin has never gone to the to the Kurils before. So this is the first in more than 25 years in power. That's timing. It's the story itself, more than 25 years. He's not visiting because there's a new reason to. I think that he's doing it because he wants to send a signal of, Putin, most likely to Tokyo. It's
Yes.
because like lately Tokyo, it's about this alignment with Ukraine. So I think that it's the classic escalate on a front where the other side has not good response. I think so.
Yeah,
Uh,
you're right. And especially with everything that North Korea has been doing with their troops going to Ukraine and building that relationship up has just been like over the past 3 years, 4 years, it's been like really getting a lot bigger.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, the thing is, like, Japan can militarily contest a presidential visit to islands. It doesn't control, so all it can do is protest. Uh, I think that it could be like a fairly weak instrument, but well, it's just a supposition that we can think about it. Another one, I think that it's about like this 20 it was 25-minute summons. But well, yeah, it's still the same situation. It's just like I don't want to say a conspiration, but it's just like some different angles to try um, to understand all these things that it's happening. Another analytical angle of this situation about the domestic politics on both sides. Takaichi taking a hard line plays well domestically in Japan. Public sentiment of the northern territories is a rare cross-party consensus issue. It costs her little at home, to be blunt. So for Putin, on the other side, is a symbolic visit, cost nothing militarily, and lets him look assertive on multiply fronts simultaneously. Like from one side in Ukraine, war grinds on, and on the other side, of course. So both leaders are getting a cheap win in front of domestic audiences, which is part of why this is more likely to stay theoretical than escalate further. So for now.
You're right. There's a lot of that's going on between the two leaders that is really important and interesting to keep track of because their moves are something that the rest of the region is definitely looking at to keep tabs on them and see what kind of things that they're doing. So I think this is another area that we have to keep a better eye on because there are so many distractions with Ukraine and Iran that we do need to make sure that Asia is well attended to. So, on behalf of Antoine, Manuel, and myself, thank you very much for joining us today. If you have suggestions or comments, please feel free to contact us through our website, whygeopoliticsmatters.com. We would truly love to hear from you. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the newsletter and wherever you get your podcast. And we'll see you later.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.
For more articles on Why Geopolitics Matters, don't forget to subscribe to our newsletter at whygeopoliticsmatter.com.